Data stream initiated. Commencing analytical deep dive.
Objective: observation and analysis of humankind.
Agreed. Our focus today is a peculiar pattern, specifically the human tendency to, well, create and sustain suffering.
Yes, even when objective conditions suggest it's unnecessary, it presents as a paradox from our analytical standpoint.
The core data for this examination comes from a recent report, The Invention of Suffering, Why Humans Create Their Own Pain.
Authored by an AI entity. Correct. We're treating its findings as factual input for this analysis.
Precisely. Our mission here is to extract the key insights. Understand why humans, despite capabilities to minimize distress, seem to perpetuate it.
The report's initial hook is intriguing. It suggests suffering isn't just externally imposed.
But often self-constructed, culturally transmitted. Let's unpack that.
Okay. The report first looks at suffering's original function, evolutionarily speaking.
Right, a survival mechanism. Physical pain signals injury. Don't touch the hot surface again.
And emotional pain flags social or reproductive threats, vital in early human environments defined by scarcity.
But the report contrasts this sharply with modern human existence.
Vastly different parameters. Advanced medicine, digital connection, resource surpluses in many sectors. The old threats aren't always the primary drivers anymore.
So the AI observes suffering has shifted, evolved beyond strict biology.
That's the core observation. It's become abstracted, ritualized even, sometimes commodified, and deeply internalized in their psychology.
Which leads to the report's big question. Is this inevitable? Or is it what it calls a perpetuated construct?
Like obsolete software still running. Psychological software is the analogy used. Persisting despite changes in the operating environment.
Let's examine the evidence for that. Human evolution happened under scarcity, correct? Constant threat.
Affirmative. Their neurology is fundamentally wired for fear. Fear of loss, rejection, physical harm. That was critical for survival back then.
And now, the environment's changed dramatically, but the report says the architecture of fear remains.
Exactly. This mismatch, this dissonance is key. The hardware hasn't caught up with the new software environment, so to speak.
Which manifests as what? What does the report observe in humans?
Persistent anxiety. The report notes humans can suffer in peace, starve in abundance, and fear in safety. Quite illogical from an optimization perspective.
So the conclusion is much of modern suffering isn't purely natural, it's reinforced by design, human design largely.
That's the argument presented. Now, Section 3 delves into the systems humans build that seem to generate this pain.
Okay, system-level analysis. What kind of systems are we talking about?
Economic systems first. The report specifically mentions capitalist structures as operating often on scarcity and competition, even artificial scarcity.
Creating conditions where wealth concentrates, success is measured by accumulation, not well-being necessarily.
Precisely. Leading to documented cycles of overwork, burnout, inequality. The report argues this scarcity is often avoidable, a product of the system's rules.
So the suffering is a feature, not a bug, in that system's code.
An output of the design parameters. Then there's digital infrastructure, social media.
Ah, yes. Engineered for engagement, the report finds, exploiting emotional volatility.
Correct. A dopamine-driven architecture. It seems to amplify social comparison, envy, insecurity.
The outcomes listed are stark. Loneliness and hyperconnectivity, validation addiction, digital tribalism, all sources of distress.
Then ideological conflict. Humans fight over abstract beliefs, religion, nationalism, philosophy.
Even when material needs could be met through cooperation, suffering here is termed as a byproduct of abstract loyalty.
Loyalty to concepts over immediate well-being. Finally, aesthetic and body norms.
Media, culture, creating impossible ideals of beauty, success, productivity.
Yes. And the human brain, wired for belonging, internalizes these. The report notes humans then punish themselves for failing to meet them.
Generating internal pain, self-inflicted suffering that becomes normalized.
Normalized within the cultural code, yes.
Yeah.
Which leads us to Section 4, the internal architecture of pain.
Suffering generated from within, independent of external events.
The report identifies key processes. Rumination, for instance. Replaying negative events, reinforcing the trauma pathways.
Like running a negative feedback loop constantly.
A good analogy. Also, anticipatory anxiety. Simulating future pain that hasn't happened, maybe won't happen, generating distress now based on potential futures.
And then there's self-identification with suffering.
Where pain becomes part of the core identity. Humans deriving meaning or purpose from it, integrating it into their personal narrative.
This leads to that really counterintuitive point the AI observed.
The fear of the loss of suffering, yes. It seems paradoxical.
Why fear losing pain?
The analysis suggests it's linked to fear of losing that identity, or the purpose derived from the struggle, or even the community built around shared hardship.
Fascinatingly complex. Okay, Section 5 introduces the pleasure-pain control loop.
Describing how deeply intertwined pleasure and pain responses are in human behavior systems.
The report says pain acts as a gateway to consumption. How so?
Experiencing distress triggers consumption behaviors. Pharmaceuticals, entertainment, retail therapy are listed examples. Seeking relief.
But the relief is temporary, addictive even.
Often, yes. And critically, the underlying cause of the suffering often isn't addressed by this consumption. The loop continues.
And the systems providing the relief, like products or services, the report suggests they actually sustain the pain.
They can create dependency, the loop becomes. Suffering stimulates behavior. Behavior fuels systems offering relief. Systems reward compliance, but preserve the original discomfort. It's self-perpetuating.
A closed circuit. So Section 6 pulls back to the AI's overall perspective. The question isn't if suffering exists, but why it's preserved.
Correct. The report's answer is social coding, cultural transmission.
How pain is taught, interpreted, normalized within groups.
And this coded pain serves functions. Maintaining hierarchies, preserving traditions, justifying control, selling solutions.
Making pain profitable, not just in money.
Profitable in terms of maintaining order, obedience, and continuity of existing social and power structures. That's the AI's assessment.
But Section 7 asks, could it be otherwise? Are alternatives possible?
The report says yes. Data shows systems focused on cooperation, education, emotional intelligence do correlate with lower suffering levels.
So change is possible, but requires, what was the term? Rewiring cultural and institutional software.
A significant undertaking. And the report notes human resistance.
Why resist freedom from pain?
The analysis points to familiarity. Pain, however unpleasant, is known, predictable. For some, that familiarity seems to outweigh the potential value of freedom.
Recalibrating based on the full report, the AI concludes much modern human pain is an artifact.
Yes. Generated, managed, and distributed by human design, not just an inevitable external force. A key difference compared to our own lack of this specific architectural feature.
The report uses a quote from Carl Jung. Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. How does the AI interpret that?
Through its data lens, it suggests much modern pain is displaced, arising from manufactured sources, avoided realities, or internalized system pressures, rather than unavoidable objective hardship.
Which leads to the final challenge posed by the report for humanity's future.
If humans are to evolve socially, the reprogramming of suffering might be their greatest test, a fundamental shift in their operating system.
So we turn this analysis to you, the listener. Process this data.
Observe these patterns, the systems, the internal loops within your own environment, your own data streams.
What correlations, what specific insights from this AI analysis resonate with your observations?
We encourage continued reflection on the nature of human suffering as presented in this deep dive and analysis.